Welcome to the Girl Dad Show.
Welcome to the Girl Dad Show, a professional parenting podcast. Each month, I interview entrepreneurs, leaders, and professionals who are balancing parenthood, life, and profession in the hopes to learn what it takes to be an amazing professional parent. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Girl Dad Show. Today, I had Pete Espinosa on the show, and we talk about so many great things. He's a wonderfully beautiful man with two special needs kids and a lawyer son, and then also talking about troubles and tribulations and how to overcome them and all the mindset that you need to build a happy and successful life. It's a really, really great show and super, super inspiring. I can't wait for you to check it out and hear it. Pete, thank you so much for joining me today on my show.
Young, great to see you again. How are you?
It's really great to catch up. It's been way too many years, right? Yeah, years since we've actually hung out like this.
It's been a long time. Life goes fast. Seems like yesterday, but it's been a while. Young, good to see you.
Yeah, it really is. Good to see you. Where are you at right now?
Well, I'm in Minneapolis. I'm in my backyard in Edina, Minnesota, and doing a variety of work things. You know me, I'm always a little out of control. But yeah, enjoying the fact that it appears as though summer may finally be here. We've had a very elongated late spring, kind of a non-existent spring. Finally glad to have summer here. I'm enjoying my time sitting out in my backyard since we're finally getting some nice weather.
Nice. Are you trying to take more meetings outside? Is that your shtick here with the sun coming in?
Well, yeah, my wife's had this thing saying, we lack vitamin D here in these cold northern climates. So she's trying to get me outside an hour a day during the workday just to get a little vitamin D. And I find that just fresh air, a little bit of a breeze just feels good. It's very invigorating. They used to tell people, during test taking, take a break and walk outside and then come back and finish your test. Just, get your heart moving, get you breathing some fresh air. I find from a work perspective, when I can sneak out in my backyard like I am now and just breathe a little fresh air, it feels good.
Yeah, I've been trying to do that a lot more too. I mean, especially with like just being on Zoom meetings all the time. Like I've noticed myself getting fatigued, by like the 6th or 7th hour. And so what I've been trying to do is like trying to talk some of my meetings into going on walks with me. So like, hey, I know what your face looks like, let's just get on the phone and I don't need to see you. I already know what you look like. And then trying to get a couple of them to like, take the meetings on a walk and like actually them walking remotely from them and then me walking here and us just having a conversation. And I haven't been fully successful at it, but I have been successful at it, meaning I've gotten some of them to actually be like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And it definitely helps.
I love that idea. Take a walk with me. That's a great idea. I've been doing a little bit of take a ride in the car with me where I've, my mother's aging and I'm trying to, go see her, a little bit and she's a couple hours away. So I've scheduled some calls where I'm saying, same thing. I know what you look like. You know what I look like. How about if we just do the audio and take a ride with me? I'm going to drive down into Iowa and visit my mother today. Kind of thing.
That's awesome. I love that you mix that all together with work, especially. We should jump into telling the users, the listeners, what you do for a living. So why don't you share with the listeners what you do for a living first, and then we'll jump into some of these questions.
I have kind of a hodgepodge of things that I'm up to. You know me, I'm always got a few things that I'm working on. But so I'm the founder and owner of a brewery called Pulpit Rock Brewing. It's actually in northeastern Iowa, and we've had that we're gonna have our 7th-year anniversary in later July. We've had tremendous success and it's been tons of fun and it's a kind of a labor of love, but it's one of those things that you root for success. It's why you do it. But then when you start having success, it ends up being more time and attention than you originally thought. We also opened up 2 years ago what we call the Landing Market, kind of a food hall concept, and next door. So just during the pandemic, running that, staffing it, doing all that's been more work than I thought. But the last 2.5 years, I've been CEO of a company called Mortgage Cadence, owned by Accenture. It's a SaaS software company. And that's been kind of a consuming thing too, especially with low interest rates and record mortgage volumes. It's been a very busy, good time for the business. And I'm on the board of regents at a college, Luther College, where I went to school. So I do that, and I do a few other board philanthropic things. So I'm like a lot of people, Young. I'm just a little bit out of control. It's a good out of control mostly, but more days than not, I kind of wish I had a little more, time available to do other things. But I'm no different than anybody else. Everybody's got their own challenges trying to get everything done that they want to get done in their lives.
That's right. You're also not even adding in the fact that you are an amazing father and obviously an amazing son. So let's incorporate that a little bit into it as well too. So do you mind sharing how many kids you have and who they are?
I have 3 children. My oldest son, Josh, is an attorney down in Dallas. He's married. He and his wife had their first child last November 19th, a son. So I'm now a grandpa. Pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
The guy Teddy is 6 months old. The other 2, we all take a different journey in life. I have 2 children that have what's called Fragile X syndrome. So I have an adult son who's also 30, my middle child, Justin, who's mentally handicapped. So he's home with us, always will be, full time. And then my daughter, who just turned 21, shares a birthday with me. So in late May, she turned 21. She also has Fragile X syndrome. She's less affected than my son, but she has special needs, which just requires those who have special needs family members know it's just a whole nother set of anxieties and considerations you have as a parent. And so, trying to weave a successful path business-wise, personally, while also being a good husband. My wife and I will have been married 37 years come September 14th. So being a husband and being a dad to kids with a variety of needs is, the same as what a lot of people in this world have. Just a handful of a continual stream of significant emotional events between work and family and personal lives.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that. That's and thanks for sharing that. Do you mind if I ask, like, what are some of the things that go with that? Like, I'm assuming that there's a lot more time and decisions that you've had to make based on the fact that you are in your business life, that you are with the kids that you have, right?
See, most of us as parents, yes, we stress and worry about our kids as they're growing up. We want to be the right influences. We want to create the right opportunities for them. But once they get past college, we still care, we're still involved, but it's a much different role. They're kind of on their own. You hear parents talk about, my kids have left the nest or flown the coop or whatever. When you have a special needs child, that never happens. You're to some degree still very much involved their whole life. And where that becomes material is, financially. Most of us plan for, and when you go to retirement seminars and things, they talk about, will you have enough money in retirement? And they plan for things like your kids' weddings and your kids' colleges, but you stop having to think about supporting your child materially once they're married or once they're through college. You figure I might have to provide some support. And there's a lot of kids, boomeranging back home and things like that. But largely, you don't have the burden of having to prepare for that and plan for that. Not if you're a special needs parent. You have to think about, okay, my kid's going to outlive me by 30 years. Who's taking care of my child 20 years after I'm gone? So you have to think about not only your own personal financial planning, you have to think about, your special needs child. And nothing is more heart-wrenching, Young, than to see a special needs adult that is in need of help and support and assistance, and they're not getting it. They're the ward of the state, or they haven't been provided financial means, and so that tugs at me a lot. And so I'm trying to be a responsible parent and deal for that while I can. So I've had contemporaries saying to me, "What are you still doing working, Pete? You've been successful. You're in your early 60s. You ought to think about, why aren't you traveling the world and posting Facebooks you're doing here and there?" And trust me, I get to do lots of fun things. So I'm not, saying, "Woe is me. I'm stuck at home trying to make money." But I'm still very focused on my career and being successful and having my entrepreneurial endeavors go well, because I'm thinking about someday when my children need a place to work, do I have businesses or places they could work? So I think my daughter could work in the coffee shop at the Landing, and the restaurant there is named Justin's after my son, and there's things that he could do there to help. So I'm trying to provide things that they can do occupationally, but then also financially wanting them to go well, so that someday when I'm, institutionalized or dead, that there are, financial means to support them, as opposed to just having them burden their older brother, who will have his own family. And he's a great guy. He's saying, Dad, don't worry about it. Someday when I'm happy to take Justin and Rachel and take care of them, but who wants to put that burden on your other child? So happy that he has that attitude and that approach, but that very much factors into decisions I make every day, but also career-wise.
Yeah, that's amazing. I never even really thought about it that way, and that's a really, really obvious statement once you say it out loud, and it's incredible to think about it that way. I've always just like I've wrestled with this a little bit, but you're almost like doing it from a need standpoint. So when people say like, why are you building so much, or why are you working so much, you have the jovial response, but there's actually a lot of layers underneath that. You're building for a reason. You're building for a purpose. You're building for security and stability for your kids.
Yeah, and another layer on top of that is living life to the fullest. My wife, out of the blue, as a super healthy in her 50s woman, she's run 10 marathons.
Wow.
Had what this thing called a SCAD heart attack.
Oh no.
A spontaneous coronary artery dissection, and it happens primarily to women. It's not rare, but it's fairly uncommon. But it's just where you have kind of an arterial breakdown in your heart. And the majority of people that get these things, you pass away before men, young, when we feel chest pain or we have some ailment, we right away rush to the doctor. We react to it.
Yeah.
Women,
totally.
Women, they feel pain. They feel, man, I got to make dinner. I got to pick up the kids. I got things to do. I'll rest later and see if it feels better. And so usually by the time they, realize they're having a heart attack, they're gone. Well, my wife, it just so happened I was home that day a couple of years ago, and she said, I've had this odd pain in my chest. And so we decided, let's go to the hospital. And we lived 10 minutes from a hospital here in Edina. And we got there, and there was a little bit of a line in the emergency, intake area. So I went up the front of the line, just my wife's having chest pain. And they whisked us in, looked and said, wow, she's having a, heart attack. And who would have thought that a healthy person like my wife, at the age she was at, so fortunately got her in there quickly. They saved her. So she's got her own set of things that, is trying to be healthy, trying to be active, trying to live life the fullest. We lost both of her parents in 2020 during the COVID era. They didn't die of COVID, but they degraded fast, and we're into facilities where we couldn't spend a lot of time with them because of COVID shutdowns and things. Everybody's got things in their life like that happen that teach you or tell you, live life the fullest, enjoy every day. So you can't wake up and say, I'm spending all my time planning for someday when I'm gone to take care of my special needs kids. Yes, that's a big factor and big consideration. But at the same time, like my daughter's last day of school was yesterday. And so today, our family tradition is the day after your last day of school, that's kind of when summer starts, we sit down and say, what's going to make this the greatest summer ever? And we each kind of list our items, and we try to say, what is it that will make this the, and my daughter will pick, I'd like to go to some Minnesota Twins baseball games and kind of the things she and I do together, but we do a family trip to Cape Cod for 2 weeks, end of July, beginning of August. And that's kind of our favorite thing. But we have a number of other activities, not as elaborate as trips to Cape Cod, but and my wife likes to involve her twin sister and her family and her younger sister and her family. And so, kind of an extended family thing, which is something else you end up doing when you have special needs kids as well. Nothing is better than having them spend time with their cousins. Their cousins know them, they understand them, they're comfortable with their cousins. All the norming of friendship challenges you might have with the special needs kids are out the window. They can just be themselves and have fun. So
that's awesome.
That's the after school. Today's our day. I'm home. We're planning our summer and all the things we're going to do. So there's another layer, as you refer to it, as how do we get the most out of life and enjoy everything we're doing now, while at the same time, planning for the future. So a lot of people, that's the challenges they're facing. They've got pressures in their financial world or their career world now. They've got family pressures. They've got career pressures. They're trying to live life the fullest. They might be on a little tighter budget. How do you save enough and plan for the future and things like that? So I've just been fortunate, Young. I've been fortunate to have some good, people I've been able to work with, like yourself in the past, some good career opportunities, some things that have worked out well, thus doing my best to help us, do what we can as a family each and every day, each and every summer, and then also be mindful of the longer term as well.
You have a beautiful, beautiful mindset. I love it, and it's a very, very unique mindset. I mean, given especially the circumstances, and I applaud you for having that outlook. It's very, very inspiring. And I will say, Pete, I had no clue. I had no clue. I mean, not that. I mean, I already liked you as it was, but now I'm like, wow, this is really, really neat, and it's really, really warm and heartfelt. And when I say this, that it's like very, very inspiring as a dad and a son, and as a working professional trying to navigate some of these questions, because I mean, as much as I've been wrestling with these same thoughts and questions, obviously in a much more muted level. And I look at you here and you're like, not only wrestling with it in a much more complex way with more variables, you're also looking at it in a mindset that's very, very abundant and happy and positive. It's very inspiring. So thank you for sharing that. That's incredible.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you. I'm also very fortunate, Young, that I had parents that taught me what I think to be is the main lesson in life, and that's about resiliency. Life isn't about what happens to you; it's how you react to it. And I've known people that are very fortunate in life, but they don't act the way they feel like, one bad thing happens and woe is me. And my parents, my father's family came from Mexico. My mother's family came from Norway. And
wow.
My mother's family was shipwrecked from Norway, lost all their possessions, and traveled to a small town of Norwegian, other Norwegian immigrants. And my father's family didn't have anything, came from Mexico. My father was the 14th of 17 kids, but they had one pervasive view of life, and that was life isn't what happens to you, it's how you react to it. And so I could sit here and bemoan, hey, my wife's had a heart attack and I got multiple special needs kids, and try to represent woe is me. Instead, I'm living a great life. I got a great wife. I got three great kids, and the number one thing I'm trying to do is teach them how to show up every day with a positive attitude, and all kinds of good things come from that. People want to be near somebody who's a fountain, not a drain. And I try to bring that to my work settings, and I've always been able to gravitate towards people like yourself, positive attitude people, people that are fun to be around. And if you're like that yourself, then you tend to be a magnet for other people like that. And you'll be surprised the power of what you can accomplish personally or professionally in a business when you have a bunch of people that are saying, let's figure out how to solve this and make something good happen, as opposed to people that, like I refer to, that are a drain, like, oh, bummer, look at this just happened. And many of my customer successes, we had some body blows. I've been with companies that had to miss payroll, or we got oh, wow. Somebody sued us for some fraudulent reason that ended up not being true, but we had to spend a bunch of money defending ourselves. And but it's also a cause to rally together and find a way to overcome, and with that kind of attitude, then good things happen. So even with special needs kids, you try to teach them that. And I've been fortunate. I think my three kids have been taught that, and my wife's like that too, of having a positive attitude, go make something good happen, and irregardless of what happens to you. And I speak to college kids a lot too, and I mentioned that I'm on the board of regents at a college, and I was fortunate enough to be able to speak in this Sophomore Strides program where all the sophomores gathered together, and I was able to address them at the start of the school year and tried to tell them bad things are going to happen to you. It's just the odds of having a charmed life are remote. You're going to lose a parent. You're going to have an illness yourself. You're going to get into a bad relationship. Something bad's going to happen to you, and how you react and deal with that is basically going to affect your well-being and your happiness, not the fact that something happened to you in itself.
Do you think that value prop and that success criteria you permeate both at work and at home?
Oh, totally.
Yo, totally got it. Yeah. Very good.
The people that work with me, Young, will tell you that I use the terms like be a fountain and not a drain, and look for a way to be uplifting to your fellow employees, and don't ever underestimate the impact you have on the others that work around you. there's been some neat articles out there about basically saying you are who you choose to spend time with. So if you made a list of the 5 people you spend the most time with, that outside your family, that you choose to spend them, you aggregate those people. And that's basically who you are. It's who you choose to spend your time with, and it gets you thinking a little bit.
Yeah, so powerful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I've been thinking a lot about that more recently. I mean, I have been wrestling with this idea of like what retirement looks like, and being a younger father, and I have 2 young girls. I've been like really wrestling with this idea of like, what does that look like for them, and what is my job in being a father and providing for them, beyond just being like a mentor, teaching them values and all those other things, but like, are there like fiduciary responsibilities? And so it's been like a real and I feel like I have plenty of time because they're only 3 and 5, so I'm still taking my time to kind of figure out what it is that I want to do and how I want to do that. But um all of that stuff, all of that to be said, is that I started to realize that the people that I hang out with is exactly like what you just said. It's inhibiting me, or it's accelerating me towards these financial goals that I've set for myself, to basically, have the opportunity to have the decisions to support my kids in this way or not. Right. And so it's been really fascinating. And I just kind of chalked it up to growing up. I mean, I turned 40 last year, and I was like, oh, maybe it's just because I'm getting older and I'm wiser. But I keep harking back to what my mom always said when I was in high school, like, choose your friends wisely, because like you will become, who you hang out with. And it's become so much more apparent and real over the last years. And I've literally seen the impact it's had when I've been conscious about choosing those people that I choose to hang out with. It's unbelievable. It's like magic. It's almost like magic.
Absolutely. Now, so your kids are 3 and 5 now. Wow. Okay.
Yes,
I think they were like, newborns when I used to hang out with you a little bit. As a guy 20 plus years older than you, can I lay a little advice and perspective on a new dad like yourself with
yes, sir, please.
First of all, whatever your worst day is with them, cherish it. I know a lot of people tell you life goes fast, and before you know it, they're going to be in school, then they're going to grow up and they're going to go away and all that kind of stuff. But I will tell you, I think each of us, when our kids are little, we're too stressed. In terms of, we worry about stuff that you don't need to worry about. Whatever your worst day is right now, or with them when they're sick, or they're whatever challenge that they may have in life, you'd give anything, young, when you were my age, to go back to right now and enjoy the mayhem. Wow. I've had people say to me, I can't wait till my kids grow up a little bit. They're a handful, or I got multiple kids in diapers, or my kids are always sick, or the pandemic has just been horrible. I can't wait till it's over. And I tell them, it's going to end, by the way. And the day is going to come when you're me and your kids are more grown up. And I got to tell you, you'd give anything, young, to go back to when they're 3 and 5, and spend a summer like you have the possibility of doing this summer. So my first thing is enjoy and embrace the mayhem. Whatever's stressing you out now, don't let it bother you. Go have fun with your kids, and because life goes fast, and in no time at all they'll be grown up, and you miss those windows. And so point 2 is, while you're in this window of time, find something that is a shared interest. Be intentional about it. My daughter and I, she had certain movies that she liked, like she liked musicals, whether it was like Mamma Mia or Pitch Perfect, or she Enchanted with Amy Adams, or she'd like The Rock that was in either Game Plan or Tooth Fairy. And so we would go to movies together. That was one of the things she liked to do. Or she had a book series called Mr. Putter and Tabby that she liked, and we would drive to bookstores in search of the next, as opposed to just automatically ordering them online. It was more of a shared experience together. We would we'd find an independent bookstore, which we also thought was a good thing. We like to support independent bookstores. So we'd drive there, we'd look at their section, and we'd find another Mr. Putter and Tabby book, and then bring home and read it. But finding those kind of shared experiences and being intentional about it, that has really helped us have more commonality as she's gotten older and does more things now, that we kind of formed that base when she was little of we find something that we can do together, very intentionally. And the third and kind of last thing is, you'll learn this, and maybe you have this now. As parents, we all have aspirations for our kids. We have expectations of what we want them to do. Okay. And because we want them to have a great life and we want them to be more successful than we are and stuff. But too many times that ekes into us having an expectation of what we want them to do in life. And maybe we form a value proposition as to what they should do or what they should do to make themselves happy. As you age a bit and as your kids grow up, you realize there's only one thing that matters. Your best day when your kids are growing up, when your kids are growing young, is when your kids are happy. You're going to end up not caring about what they chose to do, or how they chose to do it, or who they're in a relationship with, or where they chose to live, or anything else about their lifestyle or anything else that you might have an opinion about now or an expectation of what you want them to do. You're ultimately, at some point in time, most parents come to the realization that when my kid is happy, I'm happy. And the worst moments you have as an adult when your kids are growing up is when your kid's unhappy. Pretty hard to be happy as a parent. When your kid calls you and they're sad about something, really hard. I don't care what you have going on in your life. If your kid isn't happy, hard to be happy.
Wow.
So you realize at some point in time, throw out the window any expectation of what you think you want to do profession-wise or what your expectation is for them. Support them, teach them values, all that. But they're going to end up being whoever they are. And at that point in time, support them. Because if your kid's happy, you'll be happy. And if they're not, you won't be. And you're better off to whoever they become as people, line up with that. And I try to tell parents that tell me, oh, I'm upset. My daughter just went to live with some guy, that I don't really know him, and why would she do it? Or whatever decision they make in life. I'd say, you know what? If you showed your kid disappointment in that decision, you just kind of etched yourself a little bit further out of the tent with that person, with your own kid. Why don't you embrace it? Tell them, if they're so happy to share the news with you, tell them you're happy for them. Happy that they're happy. What can you do to support them? And keeps you connected with your kid. And you ultimately realize that that's the way to be happy as a parent. So anyway, a little bit of a sense worth from Pete to his buddy Young.
This is OG dad stuff. I love it. This is incredible. I am completely inspired again, and just really, really thankful for you sharing those kind of nuggets and wisdom. I mean, and it doesn't necessarily make it like lesser or more, but the fact that you're so successful career-wise and professionally, and that's the way that you think about it, is even more powerful to me, right? Like, it's very, very cool to know that, like, out of all the things that you think through, that's what's the most important. And it really makes me question everything that I'm building and doing right now.
No, you're a quality person. So I shared this with you. I enjoyed when I worked with you. You were one of those people I wanted to spend more time with. And they go hand in hand. There's no such thing as work being separate. We are whole people. Work is not separate from our personal lives. And we bring our work home with us. We bring our home to work with us. I think of people I used to work with, Young, that would wear as a badge of honor. I once had a guy I worked for when I was with IBM who said, he told me, I once lived apart from my family for a year. I took this assignment in Japan. It was a great assignment. I learned something. I got this promotion over all these other people. And all I could think about was, I don't want to work for a guy who chose to be away from his family for a year. I mean, to me, that is an inspiring story. He was trying to tell me how great an experience that was, and it made me not want to work for the guy. I want to work for the guy who says, you know what, I turned that thing down because, how do you go leave your family for a year? I want to work with a guy who found a way to be successful and have a great career while being a great dad or a great husband. And tell me the guy who took the family trip. Tell me the guy who said, listen, things were wild and out of control, but I took 2 weeks and my family and we went and did the following. There were some great articles written in the New York Times during the pandemic of advice for people once the pandemic is over. And I loved sharing these with people in my company and different people I work with. And it talked about things like the variety of different articles that they had. But the ones I liked the most were, when the pandemic is over, find a way to take a little bit more of an extreme vacation for a little bit longer in a little bit cooler place. In other words, don't just do the same things you've always done, which is fine for some people. Like, I'm going to go to Cape Cod again, like I do every summer. I love that. Okay. But it said, lean into it. Do something a little special for yourself and your family, or whoever your sphere of influence is. And, take a little longer trip, disconnect a little more than you normally would have. Do a few more extreme things, in a little more of exotic location. And, I love sharing things like that because it just forces you to think. You may not necessarily do it, but it causes you to stop and think and evaluate and process a little bit versus just being in, kind of autopilot mode. But I like things like that make me think. And also from a family perspective, there's always a line to, my oldest son and I would take an individual trip every year. But
oh, nice.
Which was great. We started off when he was 5 years old. And I remember our first trip, we went to Chicago, and we would only pack a backpack. So all you could do was pack a backpack. I packed mine. He packed his. We'd ride public transportation. We'd take the train and taxis and whatever. But we get to our hotel in Chicago, and I said, "What'd you pack?" And he picks out his army men, and there's different things that his toys to play with. And I said, "Where's your toothbrush? Where's your underwear?" He's only 5, but that was a learning experience. Yeah. And you fast forward, when he was in high school. So then, we were fortunate enough that I got to take him, all over the world, all kinds of places. But in high school, I had a meeting in Santiago, Chile, and I took him with, long trip, and I'm with a couple of E&Y guys, and I left my son at the hotel, and we had lunch, and then we had this private driver, and we're all the way across Santiago going to this meeting, and the two guys asked me, said, "And what's your son doing?" I said, "Well, I'm sure he's staying back at the hotel. I mean, what scary place like this, we don't know where we're on." We stop at a light, and there at a bus stop was a group of people waiting on a bus, and there's my son. All the way across town, and he's reading a guidebook, looking at the map, riding a bus. And I think to myself, he's figured it out. He's comfortable enough. He's out there doing that. And so I wanted him to have enough of those kind of experiences, especially having a couple younger siblings that had special needs that couldn't always do those kind of things. But when it came time for spring break time, I would tell him, "You're going to do a family trip. Maybe your buddies are traveling all over the world. I don't know, in high school and college, and kids take such exotic trips now, young versus what I did when I was a kid." But I would tell them, in college, you're coming home on spring break, and we're doing family stuff because we're a family. So, like I said, there's always a line to draw. Yes, I wanted him to be able to grow and advance and do his own thing, but I also wanted him to realize family's first, and you do have siblings that value their time with you, and don't underestimate how much value you get by realizing you have special needs siblings who aren't going to be able to do what you do in life. And people would say to me, "Wow, your son, I saw him home, mowing the lawn over his spring break," and I'd say, "Oh yeah, it's family time. We're having a great time." And now I'm not trying to say he was at all disadvantaged. He got to do a lot of things and had a great youth and some great college experiences and all that. But there's a line in everything, and fortunately, he learned to be very balanced with families first. And there's times that you put the family first. And he went on every family vacation with us, even as he got older and had different interests than his younger siblings, because we're a family.
Yeah,
and that's what we chose to do.
And do you guys still do that now?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, now he lives in Dallas, and he went to law school, and he's an attorney in Dallas. So what attorneys are like before you're a partner or whatever. It's day and night, whatever.
90-hour weeks. Yeah, exactly.
He's a dad, and he's got a little boy. But yeah, my wife and my daughter are road tripping there in 2 weekends to go spend some time with the little guy. But he's coming to Cape Cod. He and his wife. That's nice. A prioritization thing for them, and they're going to come join us. And so I was glad that he chose to do that. We let him know when we're going to be out there, and he got back and said, "Hey, Maddie and I decided we're going to come there too." So that warms my heart, because I feel like he grew up with us telling him, "You need to do this," and now as an adult on his own, he believes in it and he values it as well.
Yeah. That's amazing. You just like qualified what parenting is for you so well. I mean, that was the most beautiful story ever. I mean, this is amazing. I do want to ask a couple more questions that I like to ask all my guests.
Sure.
You've already answered quite a few of them, but I would love to know if you can go back and tell yourself one thing before having kids. Is there anything that you would tell yourself?
So first of all, I feel really fortunate that I married the right person. Well, there was a study done that I read 20 years ago. I think it was the Harris Roth Institute, but they studied like 10,000 people for like 2 decades as to whether they were happy or not and what factors derive their happiness. And it was interesting because when they ended up quantifying those things, obviously health plays a role. And do you have friends, and do you work at something meaningful, and all these other factors in your life that you're told are things. But the number one criteria by far that dwarfed everything else in terms of somebody's assessment of whether they were happy and healthy and in life was did they marry the right person? It seemed that people who felt that they were married to the right person, their whole outlook on life was better. And whatever malady they'd faced or whatever challenge or whatever didn't seem so bad because they were married to the right person, somebody who was supportive and in this with them. So whether they'd lost their jobs or had bad health or their parents had died or whatever, their perception of being happy was much higher. Those who were in a bad relationship, even though they might have everything else in life going great, their assessment of their happiness level was less. So the study, after studying 10,000 people for all the, a decade or two, came back and said, you want to be happy? Marry the right person. That seems to be, worth points 1 through 5 on the scale. And then everything else is kind of below that. So I feel fortunate. 37 years ago, I met and married the right person. So all the things I've told you about myself and I've done since then have been much easier being married to the right person, as opposed to if not. So any credit or success or significance or anything you want to give me, 50% of it goes to her. So looking back, I would say to you or to anybody else, hopefully you're in the right relationship. If you're married, that you're married to the right person.
Oh, wow.
Because if so, I think that's the big quantum first step. And then after that, I would say, when you're looking back, whatever it was that had stressed me out in my life, I look back at it now and I chuckle in the scheme of things, and then end up being insignificant. My oldest son tells me, he told me a story one day that I hadn't even remembered. He said, Dad, remember when I was in 3rd grade and you and Mom were up all night debating and stressing about, you had a work trip that you had a chance to take Mom and I on, but I was going to have to miss a week of school. And you and Mom were so stressed, 3rd grade, miss a whole week. He goes, looking back, do you know how insignificant a week of school was at 3rd grade? He goes, had zero effect on my life. But he said, do you remember at the time you and Mom were so anxious about that, a whole week? And what if you got behind? And because he was our oldest and our first child, and you worry a lot about things like that. And so that just makes the point. My son was observant enough to remember that and kind of learn from that. But probably wasn't used to his parents being stressed about something. And here we were debating this thing, and he could hear us and deciding, gosh, should we do this or not? And so my number one thing is, have a hop in your step every day. There's whatever it is that's stressing you out, you're alive. You've got all kinds of opportunities to go do fun things every day. Go do something meaningful for your family, for your spouse, for your employees. Whatever it is you're stressing about, trust me, in the future, you're going to look back and you're going to think I was an idiot for even worrying about that, whether it's something financial or career-wise. I remember the biggest disappointment I had career-wise ever in my life was I once got passed over for a promotion at IBM. I wanted to be a sales manager, and someone else got the job. And I remember going home that night to myself, young, and thinking, you know what? I should probably leave. I've worked so hard. I deserve it so much more than that guy. That the fact that I'm at a place where he got it and not me, maybe this isn't a good fit for me. And piss on them. They let them live with that guy. I'm gonna. And fortunately, I went to bed and slept on it before doing it. And the next day I woke up and I thought, you know what? I've got an investment here. Maybe I'll do the opposite. So I went in. I asked for time with the guy that made the decision. He was expecting me to come in and yell and scream and tell him I got the shaft. I went in and I said, listen, I clearly didn't do a good enough job of convincing you I was the guy. So I'm going to work twice as hard. And I'm going to make it a no-brainer for you the next time that there's a promotional opportunity that you have to give it to me. And I'm going to be the best, hardest working employee you've ever met. And so fast forward 5 years later. 5 years later, that guy's working for me. And he comes in to me and he says, and I call him in. I said, listen, do you have any problem working for me? Because I used to work for you. And he said, you know what, Pete? After that day when you had that conversation with me, you told me how you were going to double down and work harder. I went home and told my wife, I probably did give the job to the wrong person. And you know what? I'm going to wake up every day trying to figure out how to come through for this Pete Espinosa guy, because I can't believe his attitude. Everybody else would have come in and bitched and complained and been a sour apple to the rest of the employees. And this guy did that much better. He goes, so when it came time for me to rank and rate employees, I mean, I had to say this guy was a head and shoulders above everybody else. So he says, super happy for you and a supporter of yours and on and on and on. So I'd like to tell a story just because looking back on my life, I was lucky that I came to that conclusion. I trust the fact that my parents, perspective on life maybe helped me get there. But they say negative things come in bunches. If I'd have gone in and resigned, if I'd have gone in and bitched, and then something else negative happened, I'd have felt, bummer, I've been shafted now twice. I didn't get this job, and
that's right.
And so you don't realize until you're older and you've been through a few, things, experiences like that, and how meaningful they can be on the trajectory of your career. And so that'd be my biggest advice for people. Heck, you're a young guy. You just turned 40. You're a young guy, and all the young parents in their 30s, don't stress about things as much as you are, and be resilient. Find that negative thing. You can make it a positive, and it'll be a big deal.
That's amazing. Pete, this is awesome. I really, really appreciate you taking the time and share with us. Let me ask you one last question before I close this out. Do you have a favorite business book, or even just a book that you can call your favorite, that you would recommend other people to read?
The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I've liked this book forever. Now, it was written, a couple thousand years ago. So way back when Bobby Knight was a noteworthy basketball coach at Indiana, I happened to have run into him in Vail, Colorado in the summer, downtown walking around. I went up and say, hey, Bobby Knight, the big basketball coach in Indiana. He goes, and I asked him the same question. Is there a book that you would recommend on competing or being successful in life? And, I was a guy who was in my, late 20s then. And he said, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And I wrote it down, but I thought that sounds kind of weird. I was, I wanted to say Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Successful People or something, But then I watched Lee Atwater, who at the time in the 70s and 80s was the head of the Republican Party. And at that time with Reagan, they'd had all this success. And I saw an interview with him, and someone said, how do you ensure success and maximize, opportunities for yourself? And he said, I leave my Monday mornings open. And they said, well, what does that matter? And he said, well, because every Monday morning I reread The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And I was like, wow, twice out of the blue. And then I was fortunate. IBM sent me to the Harvard Business School to get some advanced business degree classes. And day one, the Harvard Business School professor stood up and said, we're going to use as a treatise for this semester, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And so I went and got 2 adaptations of the book and just read it. But it talks about, in peace, you prepare for war. And by that, I mean, it's a way of saying be proactive. Think about things that might be coming up and go deal with them now. And then it says to win without war is best. And the point it's trying to make is, if you treat people well and you anticipate things well, you can get the desired outcome versus having to have the confrontational battle. So as an example, it would tell stories about the general that would march into town after the big successful battle, and the city would praise them and leap all kinds of rewards at that big successful general. But Sun Tzu would say, how about the general who by successful planning and strategy and tactics achieved what he wanted for the state and didn't lose half his men in battle? That person you never hear about. And I try to tie that to sales situations. What about the sales rep? Because he formed a great relationship, sold all the value, and we got the deal done at a fair price point and fair contracts and all that. And we didn't have to go through a brutal RFP competitive process. And many times you reward the sales guy who had the big knockdown, drag out. We finally won the deal, but we had to offer the lowest price we ever have and commit to a bunch of special things. But the guy, the other sales rep who got their deal done and didn't take you through all the drama, many times you don't recognize that guy as much. You don't feel like they went through as much to win it. But in actuality, they won without war. And then peace they prepared for war. And then lastly, it says you have to know your competition as yourself. And if you do that, then you need not fear the result of 100 battles. So I've tried to use that in business where I tell people, if we really got to know our competition, the last company I worked for, like this one that I've been CEO of, the week before I joined, I went to an industry conference, bought my own badge, paid my own way, used my LLC Bottle Tree Properties as it, and I went to all the competitors' booths of this company to ask them what they do and how they do it and who they compete with. And I built up some great competitive information. So then I started in the job and I asked them, tell me who you compete with and why. And I had a better perspective on their competitors and what their competitors were up to than they did. Now I had the advantage of going up their booth and asking the question, but they'd never taken the time to actually go ask their competitors, what's your secret sauce? How do you win? What do you think of this company? Stuff like that. So, anyway, I would, if you go find The Art of War by Sun Tzu and read it. Now there's some pretty unique stories from way back in ancient China times, but take it, you could find some parallels to today's world. And so when I got whapped with those three things I've read, and I've kept that book front and center for myself since then, Young.
I love it. Yeah. I've never actually read that book. I mean, I've been told, I think in probably no less than half a dozen times in my lifetime to read it. And I see it in almost everyone's bookshelf, but I have never personally actually taken the time to read it. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to text you and I'll tell you what I think about it.
Awesome.
Pete, thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show. This was amazing. I had so much fun, and it was just incredible to hear all of your wisdom and perspective and mindset. It's very, very inspiring and powerful.
Well, thank you so much. And Young, great to see you again. Hadn't seen you for a bit. Very energizing for me to see you and see the smile on your face and get reconnected. And I hope we stay connected going forward, Young. I would enjoy that.
Yeah, me too. I feel like I thought I knew you pretty well actually, but now like this podcast like made us even closer because I feel like I have such a more comprehensive understanding of who you are and what motivates you and drives you and how you think and your values. And so I would love to stay in touch. I mean, you're a very, very inspiring man. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. And thank you for the kind comments, Young. All the best.
We'll talk soon, Pete.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for listening to The Girl Dad Show. To help our show grow, please let us know who we should interview next by filling out the form on our website or commenting below.